Greetings, fellow quitters, and welcome back to the Command Q podcast. We're your hosts. I'm Maari Casey.
And I'm John Pelfrey.
Do you want to feel more like the master of your own destiny? In a world where there are a lot of things we can't control, it can be challenging to remember all the things that we can. Today, we're talking about learned helplessness, the feeling that everything is chaotic, so you might as well just get over it and let it wash over you. At Command Q, we're big believers in quitting, but not in giving up. If you want to start owning the ownable parts of your life, then this episode is for you. All right, John, was there a time in your life when you felt more like things were happening to you versus you making things happen?
Yes. I mean, I think this is probably a universal thing that happens. At some point, we all end up feeling like victims somehow. And a lot of times it's because like the places where I felt like it was happening to me, when it felt like that to me the most was when I was actually creating the helplessness myself. It felt like it was happening to me and the universe was all against me. But then after I got some perspective and looked back on that time in my life, I was like, nah, actually, like you were so stressed out that you weren't thinking clearly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the key part here. Like we were running the art gallery. We were struggling to like pay our bills. We were in the middle of like trying to do 2 or 3 different jobs just to pay the mortgage every month. And the water company would call us and whatever. And it was a really, really hard time for us in terms of just like being able to handle the finances of it. And we had a little kid who was like 4 or 5 years old, and there was stress about that and, being able to provide for him and all that. So it was just like one little thing could set me off, even though in the grand scheme of things, it was a little thing. It was enough for my mind to start catastrophizing. And then once it started to catastrophize, then it turned into like all of these bad things are happening to me. And the truth is that it was like totally within my control to manage that one little thing. And I could have done it in like 5 or 10 minutes, but it felt like such a heavy weight because it was one more thing. It was like just, the straw that broke the camel's back kind of deal. But it felt like that every day. It felt like every day there was a new straw and it was a new, like my back was breaking even more. And looking back on that time, had I been able to approach it with a little more, like a bigger, broader perspective, worldview, I would have been able to see that those little things were really just little things. And then it would have helped me to focus on the big things and get that out of the way. So it was a lot for me was just about realizing later on that I'd kind of created my own chaos by not dealing with the things I could deal with. And it was easier for me to blame that on something else, whatever that might be.
Yeah. I do feel like there's at some point, everybody goes through a period of their life where it just feels like the world is falling down around you. And it's usually like a lot of things happening in semi-quick succession. So it's like, I always talk about my epic unraveling where I had 6 months of my life where just all these huge things happen. And it's hard not to get resentful and just be like, but I'm a good person doing good things. Like I'm doing this awesome, amazing art gallery. I'm trying to put art in the community. It's like, give me a break, universe, like help me out here. And it can be really hard to not feel frustrated to the point of where you become like, it's not my fault. Like everything's, I'm in a place where it's like, everything's happening to me or the government's doing this or my situation's doing this. And the thing with that is I realized too, is like, once you kind of claim that, then you lose control. You give all the power away to be able to like make it better. But it's like sometimes those things just kind of feel like everything happens at you all at once. And if you've never gone through something like that, then you're not equipped yet to know how to deal with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It is so hard to get past that point though, because once you start to feel like the universe is against you, then suddenly you start to see things through that lens. And then everything justifies your view that the universe is against you, like the trash guy doesn't come and pick up your trash on Thursday morning. And you're like, well, the universe is against me because, I've got all this trash piled up for another day. And it's like, well, he comes on Friday and picks it up anyway. It's fine. But even little things, it feels like it's all sort of like justifying your world, your perspective that everything is against you. And I think, in today's world and in today's society, we have this engine through sort of social media, through constant connectivity with news and information and everything else. It creates that sense in not just an individual person, but it creates that sense as a collective and as a whole. And we all start to feel that stress of like, well, the world is ending and everything bad is happening and there's nothing good in the world. And it seems like everything is bad and every single day feels like more bad and more bad. And the truth is, it's like, is the world a safer place today than it was 100 years ago? Yeah, absolutely it was. I mean, it's significantly safer. It's significantly better life. We have better healthcare. We have better sort of access to tools and information. Just the fact that you and I can talk on this video chat thingy and then record it and send it out to people. And, that's like a miracle of technology. And we take all that for granted and we say like, oh, well, the world is a terrible place. But then it's like, actually, there's some really wonderful things that have happened and, over the last years or whatever. It's just so hard to see it when you're in that, like every single day, it feels like pain.
Yeah, well, it's interesting and kind of I'm even thinking about like when we were talking to Craig Prado last year, but it's like we had this period of time where it's very much like victim situation. But it's interesting thing is like people are moving into this more self-reliant generation, which I think is our kids and stuff like that. And it's like we've grown up, especially in the last 10, 15 years, and it's like hyper convenience based world where everything's around and available to you. And yeah, it's like, oh, sure. Like here is your, you can sit in your bed and hit Amazon and deliver things like you're some kind of pharaoh coming to your doorstep with like pad thai and, and some kind of specialties. Like everything comes to you all at once. And it's our kids have grown up in that world and younger people have grown up in that world to where it's like, that's kind of the expectation. So when parts of that break down, it's like, of course we're impatient. Of course we feel like how I can't believe my pad thai is not delivered in 30 minutes, and I do feel like there's a little bit of that just overwhelming comfort and ease that reduces that kind of grittiness ability to be like, I'm not a victim. The person probably just got delayed or I'll just go make my own flippin' pad thai. I think that there's something part of that. It's like our convenient culture has made us be a little helpless, but then also expect it as like, this is the norm. And it's not the norm to have pad thai delivered to your house in 30 minutes or less. That's not normal. Yeah. So I do think that how we kind of conditioned ourselves now, it leads to that sensibility of like, okay, well, the expectation is that everything is easy for me. Like, that's not real. That's not realistic.
So
long term.
So convenience makes us soft. That's what you're saying.
It makes us a little soft. It makes us a little bit. Well, it makes us impatient, for sure, because we don't wait for things. It makes us a little soft. I'm hopeful because Craig and like Josh and a couple of people we've talked to have talked about how this younger generation is leaning more towards self-reliance and more towards like, I'm not a victim of this situation. I'm going to step up and I'm going to make sure I know how to do basic home repairs, because if a hurricane comes through and I need to fix up my generator, then I can do that, or I can repair this, or know how to, get to people I need to. And I do feel like this generation, probably because they've been through a lot of political unrest and social unrest, are a little bit more adapt to that. But, I think the transition from super hyper convenience to learned helplessness is an easy side step. You're like, okay, well, I don't need to worry about learning anything just because everything is available to me if I just pick up my phone and hit the correct app. So
yeah, well, and on top of that too, if you pick up your phone and you pick up other apps, social media apps or things, you can join groups of other people who also feel victimized and also feel helpless. And you can
start a club
really, really quickly. I mean, there's a group for every sort of, a grievance out there in the world. There's like multiple groups for them, and they all sort of like feed into their own echo chamber about their own. And then that creates this weird situation where you feel community with these other people who sense a certain level of helplessness themselves. And instead of, picking each other up and trying to learn how to get better and to get out of your situation, it's that sort of, crabs in a barrel kind of deal where they're just constantly pulling you back down. And it's like, well, a support group in theory is a really wonderful thing, but a support group needs a leader that can kind of call BS on the group and say like, hey, wait a minute, this isn't really helpful.
Yeah, we're not getting anywhere.
We're not getting anywhere as a group. This is holding us back. So sort of like wallowing in the muck of it is a dangerous thing. And when you can wallow in the muck with a bunch of other people, then it justifies you even more to say like, look, this is a big problem. There's 1,000 people in my Facebook, group or whatever. And
right.
all feel this pain. And, I think being able to have access to people who can justify your perspective is a wonderful thing and a dangerous thing at the same time.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's for all those reasons you said that it can hold you back. Because we always do this with the kids where when something happens, and when they're little, it's like, okay, somebody at school like stole my lunch or whatever, stole my cookie. It's always smaller things, but for them, it's a big deal. And for us as adults, certain things are big deals. And I'm always like, depending on the scope of your problem and where you are, it's like, you have every right to be frustrated by it, stomp your feet around, like fuss, and then find a way to move on. I'm like, you can't sit here for days and weeks and months and wallow on this one thing, because the situation is like when you feel like you're in a situation where you're the victim or you're helpless to control things. Like I said, you're giving away any aspect of power to get over it. And when you're in a group of that, the whole group is stuck. And it's like no one's moving forward. And that's just a bad place to be, because if you're not moving forward, you're just kind of stagnant, right? You're just kind of sitting in one spot. I do feel like it's like when you get into a situation where you're feeling kind of helpless, or you feel like the world is pecking at you, which I've felt like that before. Yeah. It's good to talk to other people outside of your group who have perspective. I remember when I was going through a time where it felt like the world was crumbling around me, and I was complaining to my Nana, who's 96. And it was stuff with, health with my family and things like that. And I remember her talking to me, and she was like, I remember when my father talking about the Spanish flu. And she's talking about this perspective. She's like, he told me that he knew that he had gotten the flu, and he just went off to the local Methodist church to lay down with everybody else who was sick and die. And he was there for 3 days, and he came back and he goes, well, I guess I didn't die. Time to get back to work. And I was just like, wow. So me complaining about this thing, not that it was a small thing, but I was like, you get the perspective when you talk to people that hard things happen and have happened and will happen forever. You're not unique in going through a situation that's difficult or that's making you impatient or frustrated. It's like, that is part of life. And I think until you really start to realize like it's normal to go through frustrating things, it's easy to be like, oh my gosh, this is bad and this is wrong, back away. So I think it's important to talk to other people who can be like, yes, there's parts of life that are really sucky and hard. That's completely normal. So then you can kind of accept it and move through it.
Yeah, absolutely. But then you have to have the perspective of like, yeah, but I have indoor plumbing, and up until 150 years ago, right. Or so, that was not
I'm doing pretty good
in humanity. Like nobody had that, all over the world. No one had indoor plumbing. Now it's everywhere. It's like, and just to be thankful and grateful for that sort of stuff. I have this, I know I talk about tennis a lot on this podcast, but tennis taught me a lot. So had this one coach that told me once that when you're feeling frustrated in a match and everything is going wrong or whatever, in between points, what you do is you walk back to the fence, you touch the fence, and you come back. But here's the deal. You can be mad at yourself from the time that it takes for you to pick up the tennis ball and walk to the fence. You can be mad, you can be upset, you can be frustrated, whatever. The minute you touch the fence, you turn around and you have to make a plan for the next point. So you give yourself the chance to grieve, be frustrated, feel your emotions, do whatever it is. But touching the fence is the signal to your body and your brain and your mind that like, okay, that's in the past now. Now I have to make a plan. Now I have to do something right now to change the situation. I don't want to lose another point, or I don't want to lose another game. But learning to turn that switch by doing something physical really helped me to be able to control my emotions in a match and not catastrophizing, like, oh, this guy's killing me and I can't stop his forehand. And, it was more of a like, okay, I can be frustrated. Oh, I did that thing. Now, what am I going to do? And when you start to train your mind to do that every single point over the course of one match and 2 matches and 3 matches and 4 matches, pretty soon it becomes really normal and it's very simple to move on.
Yeah.
And I don't have to think about doing that anymore. I just kind of do it. And so part of this too is just understanding how you can set up yourself for success to sort of rewire your perspective. And so in the tennis world, that one is a really simple thing for me. I can take a little walk, I can touch the fence, I can come back and it resets my brain. But we can do that in our daily lives too. We can go outside, take a little walk around the block and come back and reset ourselves and get a new perspective. We can, there's so many things we can do. And what I've learned is that doing something physical that involves some sort of touch, feel, sensory thing can help to be that little switch that I flip to change my mental picture. But if I just sit here and think about it, that doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah. I think getting away from a situation. Like I remember when I was doing painting in college, and it's like you get so close up on things, and the teacher was always like, "You just got to back up. You got to back up 10 feet, 15 feet, take a minute." And I think that is so key. And I think it's important to have those little, like for us for volleyball, it was always like what you said, next ball, you got to wash it and move it forward.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important to have those markers because otherwise you get stuck. And I think it's important to know, that you have a routine. So when those things happen, you can kind of like move forward from it and not feel like you're like, again, like stagnating and stuck in the same spot.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you think that we choose to believe certain things that are beyond our control because that is the thing that makes it feel like it's not our responsibility when there's a bad outcome?
Yeah, I think the idea of control is probably a whole other series of podcasts. I have issues with control because I think I like to control things. And I have this saying, it's on the post-it on my wall, and it's control the controllables.
Yeah.
Because that's something that's constantly, I'm always learning. And I think when you're young, you feel like you can control more things than you really can. A lot of times it's dealing with other people's emotions, perspectives on you. Sometimes it's things that are unfair, like a job that you should have gotten. And I think when you think you can control everything and then things don't work out for you, the immediate response is like, well, I can't control anything, right? It's like you go completely the opposite side out of frustration. When the truth is you can control certain things. You can't control whether or not you got that job. You can control how you reacted when you didn't. Mm-hmm. So I think that's perspective that I've gained as I've gotten older. I can't control what they think about me. I can control what I do with the situation. I can control how I react to it after the situation, but I can't change that person's mind. I think learning those types of things are really key because, the situation, if you like to control a lot of things, which a lot of us do, when you can't control a lot of things, you're just like, I'm a dust in the wind. And you're not talking from a position of power, you're talking from a position of frustration. And that's not a healthy way to make decisions. So I think if you can learn to identify when you're in a situation that's frustrating, what am I trying to control that I can't control? And then what in the situation can I control? And then you mentioned it earlier, I think another thing is like when you're getting to a place of just like, I'm a victim, stop being frustrated and start finding things that you can be grateful for. So for instance, like, okay, I just missed the point. I'm frustrated. This person's unfair to me. That ref is terrible or the boss is terrible. But I mean, I have running water. I'm healthy. I'm alive. I'm in the United States. I'm employed, whatever those things are. And they might sound really small and trite to you, but just like thinking about it and verbalizing, I do think helps to like re-engineer where your negativity is taking you with like, I can't do anything right. So it's important. It's important to remember gratitude.
Yes, absolutely. And it has been interesting to watch. There's sort of over the last several years been this idea that's floated up in our society about like gratitude. And, people will go on like gratitude retreats and they'll make lists every morning. Some people will make a list every morning of something that they're thankful for or, whatever it is. Sometimes I think of those retreats or those types of things. I'm like, that's pretty cheesy. Like, what could I get out of that? I don't need another like trust fall scenario with a bunch of people and thankful for them. And we all like hug and sing Kumbaya. But there is something to be said for, looking around every day a little bit and being thankful for the roof over your head, your friends, your family, the people that love you. And there's comfort in all of that stuff without it being a part of like how you perform on a daily basis, whether that's performing for work or getting a job, or if I have enough money to buy the things that I want or what. Like understanding what's enough. And you and I have had this conversation a bunch about like what is enough and understanding what that is for you or for me and getting comfortable with contentment over happiness. Mm-hmm. And there's probably a whole other conversation around what's the difference between being content and being happy. But, happiness to me is a fleeting emotion, a fleeting feeling. It's not something that I can live in every day. But contentment is this understanding that like, yeah, I'm in a pretty good place. I've got people that love me and care for me. And I've got a good job. And I've got, I do have a roof over my head and I have clothes on my back and I have running water and indoor plumbing and electricity. And, that makes me content. Am I happy all the time? No, because sometimes, I'm not happy. That goes away, whatever that is. I'm not happy for, I mean, if my football team loses, I'm not happy for like 2 hours and then I get over it,
Yeah, I think that's so important because it is people, a lot of people like think the idea that I always say like it's life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's not like the living in happiness land. And I think that's really true. Is like we can't always live in a happy situation. We live content and we live understanding of like the reality of things. And if your expectation is continuous happiness, then you will be disappointed and you will find yourself frustrated. I always say like my default gratitude is like, I'm alive. I'm breathing. My heart's beating today. Because if that's the case, then everything else can change from here on. So if I'm in a bad spot or I've gone down a wrong path or having a bad season, but I'm still alive, and that can change going forward. So if I can't think of anything to be grateful for, I can be like, well, I'm breathing and my heart is beating. So that's nothing. Everything can go from here because you always have the opportunity to change things from that point.
Yeah. Absolutely. That is the baseline. We're alive and we only have a certain amount of time on this earth, and you might as well make the best of it, whatever that is. Struggling with feeling like you can't control the outcome of something and spending all of your time on that really keeps you from enjoying the good parts about, being here, whatever that is for you. So, we're talking about like learned helplessness, and we're talking about this idea. This is on sort of a piggyback from our conversation with a home repair lab about fixing your house and being able to take charge and control of your home and all that sort of thing. When you start to feel overwhelmed by a problem or task, how do you reframe that? And like the simple one for me, if we put it in the home repair context, for example, is, like let's say you have a leak in your roof and there's water dripping down and it's staining and all of a sudden, you're like, oh my God, I got to get a new roof and I've got to do all the, you're going through a renovation right now of your house, your kitchen. You had to replace a bunch of plumbing that, by the way, was not your fault. It was a manufacturing issue, and you're having to bear the brunt of the cost to replace all those pipes and all that stuff. How do you keep that from feeling like overwhelmed and like, oh my God, we bought the wrong house and we've wasted all this money, but you still like have a good life in that way?
I think I learned probably in my 20s that life is not fair. And people say that, but you don't really process it until you realize like there's just things that happen where you just have to bite the bullet and be like, it's not fair, but I got to deal with it. And you can either choose to have that situation make you bitter and mad, or you can deal with it in the way that you can best deal with it. And I think that's like part of those situations when you have something big and astronomical, if it's beyond what you didn't do it, like somebody hit you in the parking lot and didn't leave a note. Now your insurance is going up. Like that's a very life thing that happens. Is it fair? No. Are you going to have to deal with it? Yes. And that's unfortunate. So when it feels like overwhelming in that sense, I think you just process through your anger, stomp your feet, touch the fence, and then move forward with it and try to let it go. And sometimes it's harder depending on the situation. I think when it's something huge, like you mentioned, like the drip, which is the roof, which is the thing, because there's also those kind of things. Like I do think that tough things happen in threes. And so it feels like this, club sandwich of destruction where it's just all these things piling. And you have to take it in small bites, eat that elephant, like one bite at a time, where it's like, I'm going to do this thing first, and then I'm going to do this thing. And it might take me a month to eat the whole sandwich, but we're going to get there. Because if you look at the overwhelming aspect of like something big that's happening, then it can paralyze you and you can get frozen. But you start taking like little small chunks out at a time. And then it feels like I can't control to fix this whole thing. I can control sending an email to the bank and making sure this thing is done and then be done for the day. And then tomorrow I can handle picking up my car and taking it to the insurance person and having them review it. I can do that. So it's, just one thing at a time versus the idea of like, oh my gosh, everything's got to get done immediately.
Yeah. That sense of like overwhelm. Oh my gosh. I was watching YouTube yesterday and it was this couple that purchased a French chateau, and there was like a 5-year recap. It's a huge channel, but I'd never seen it before. It was a 5-year recap on everything that they've done. And it's a 120 room chateau with all this stuff. It seems insane. And it was completely falling apart. And they show you 5 years. And honestly, in the 5 years, all they got on there was a roof, basic repairs to make it sort of livable, and they'd fixed up like a handful of rooms out of the 100 rooms. I mean, this is going to be a lifetime project for them.
Yeah.
But who knows how much money it costs? Like it seems so frightening to me. But they seem to be really content in that idea of like just taking one bite of the elephant at a time. Like we're going to do one room at a time. We're going to fix one section of the roof at a time. We're going to stop the leaks in this area first. But when I watched it and I saw the state of it at the beginning, I thought, oh, this is my worst nightmare. There's no way, even if I had all the money in the world, there's no way I would take this project on because it just feel like a never ending battle or fight. So,
Yeah.
That's a really interesting one because their perspective is so different. And it is this idea of like, every day I scrape paint or I clean up this room or I get the dirt out of this place or I call these people and they just do it. And they do it with a smile on their face, which is incredible. Yeah. So, I think in terms of like wrapping this up about like some important things that we can control, I think we already talked about gratitude. We talked about, taking it one step at a time, one bite of the elephant at a time. Are there any other things that we can, sort of like wrap this up to talk about things that we can control? I love the controllables as a perspective. I mean, that's something that I say to myself all the time. That's something that I teach my kids on the tennis court too.
Yeah. I think it's how you react to things, so again, like if you're in a game situation and the ref calls a bad call, like you can't change his call, her call, but you can move forward with the play. If it's a life situation and you get passed over for a bonus or a job or something, you can work, find another company. You can be frustrated there, or you can move forward there. But it's like how you react to those situations that feel like you can't control, or maybe you feel like you've been victimized. Like that's a key to being able to like retain the control in your life. I think it's like reframing it and being like, I can't fix this right now, but I can't fix this person, but I can do this, and finding something that you can do.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, I think the last one would be like surround yourself with people who are positive influences in your life, who are people that are moving forward in their lives. If you surround yourself with people who are negative or they sort of like continue this feeling of victimhood themselves, then you get stuck and you get stuck in a spot. Yeah. Find some people that that are always the people that you look at and go like, they're always moving forward. Like for me, you're one of those people. You're always moving forward. No matter how hard the day is, or, if a client gets upset or a freelancer decides that they can't finish a project or whatever, you're like, okay, now we're going to find somebody else to fix this. We're going to do this way. I'm going to pick up the phone and call these people. Like you're always moving forward and finding a solution in that way. And you're not sitting around and going like, oh, my Friday is completely blown and wasted because this terrible thing happened. And it's like, in reality, you spend a couple of hours, you bring some resolution to the problem, you move on. And then next week we start and we do it all over again. And if you were the type of person who did catastrophize in that way and sit and stew in it or whatever, then, we wouldn't have Uncompany the way that it is. It wouldn't be this business that people like to work with us, and it probably would have closed years and years and years ago. Right? I mean, you have to continue to solve the problems. You can't feel like, oh, this happens all the time and I hate it and whatever. You just one little step at a time. So lightning round here, what's an area of life that you've recently started being more intentional about? So something that, whether that's intentional about your sleep habits, eating, organizing, or stress management, whatever.
I think for me, I've been more intentional, more so like the last 6 months about just physically like working out and doing something. So it's like, I have my dedicated time every single morning. That's like an hour or so. That's pretty sacred. And I keep that pretty set up every single day. And then now I'm learning pickleball. So I'm like learning something. I have a coach and I'm doing it. And I love that because I love to learn and I haven't been, coached in a long time. So that's been a new thing that I've really been enjoying, stretching my brain a little bit more.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, for me, I've been more intentional about my diet over the last couple of months. I've been trying to eat more protein, eat fewer processed foods, just clean up some of the slightly unhealthy habits that I had. And it has given me a lot more energy and I don't hurt as much and I can recover and be more active and I'm losing a little weight on top of that. And it feels really good. That is a controllable that I can control, right? I can control what goes into my body. And I'm not the type of person that is hardcore about anything, really. I'm a person who believes in moderation in most situations. But when it comes to like, I can get more protein in my diet. That is a choice. I can choose to eat no eggs in the morning, or I can choose to eat eggs in the morning. But sometimes that cereal with all the sugar sounds really, really good, but it's something that I can choose. Or I can choose to not eat ice cream every night, even though I love ice cream. And I can substitute it with something else that also gives me that little bit of sweet, but it's not, it's not a whole cup full of like chocolate brownie caramel swirl, whatever. And it still satisfies. Do you have any useful mantras for banishing learned helplessness?
I think the controllables is probably my biggest one. That is just like, do what you can do with what's possible. I think that's an important one to remember.
Yeah. I like that one. I don't necessarily use mantras. I use actions because I've learned that if I get up and move my feet and I move my body around, then it helps me to let go of the mental side of where I'm stuck.
Mhm.
So that's what I tend to do instead is I look for things that I can do that physically change where I'm at, where my location is, so that I can get a different perspective where I can breathe a little differently. Even if that is just I'm sitting in front of this computer and I get up and I go outside and I sit outside for 5 minutes and then I come back in, but I get some
Mhm.
sunlight and I get some fresh air. To me, those types of things help. I'll also pick up my guitar and then I'll play it for 10 minutes and it helps to reset my brain and then I can go back to
Mhm.
things. So for me, it's less of a mantra and it is more of like an action,
Action.
a reset button for me. Yeah. All right. So last one. How do you stop yourself from rescuing, quote unquote, other people who are learning to do something hard? So this is a really tough one for parents. Our kids are learning to do something hard and you want to fix it, but you can't.
Oh my gosh. I know. This is a real struggle for me even before I had kids because I love to help people and I want to save them from things that I've already done wrong. So like I see them heading for that, cliff and I'm like, don't do it. Don't do it. Do this. And it's hard. Yeah. I think it's really hard. I'm trying to do this more with going back to kids. Like my kids are now kind of in middle school. And so this is the time when we have to back away and let them make some mistakes. And I realized too this recently, because we were talking this with our two kids. And it has to be hard now so it can be easier later, and it's like if I think we see this a lot too when we work with a lot of younger kids. We've had a lot of wonderful parents, probably like us, who have helped to take away some of the struggles. It's harder when you become an adult if you've never had to struggle through something or had to deal with something hard, because then the first hard thing you run into when you're in your 20s, you don't know how to process it and you feel like you're failing, and going through something that's hard is not a failure. I was watching a video on this coach who was talking about training athletes, and they were saying that good athletes, and it would also equate to students, they put extra time in. And it's because, when somebody runs into something hard, whether it's a class or it's like a new sport and it becomes hard, the ones that will succeed are the ones that see that not as a failure, but as this is when learning begins. It's like when something is hard, it's because it's new.
Mhm.
And this is when learning begins. So it's like that. Those are kind of the things I'm trying to remind myself so that when something's a struggle for my kids or for friends or colleagues, it's like they have to do this so that they can start to learn the thing that they need to know for the next thing they do. And if I'm jumping in right away and helping it become easier, they're never going to learn that skill. And that's not fair to them.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think everyone should have to teach someone a skill at some point because then that gives you that patience to realize like, I can't put that knowledge into their hands. Their hands have to do the thing first, and then they will learn at their own pace. For me, one of the things that always pops into my head, Ben Folds' autobiography, it was one of my favorite musicians, and I read his autobiography, and his dad used to have this phrase that he called cheap lessons or expensive lessons. And it was this idea that when Ben was young, if he made a mistake, like let's say he was driving and he ran out of gas on the side of the road, that is a cheap lesson in the grand scheme of the world. Yes, it costs a little bit to get it towed and to do it, but that's a relatively cheap lesson, even though it feels very scary if you're a teenager. An expensive lesson would be to compound on top of that, right? So an expensive lesson might be, I ran out of gas on the side of the road. I didn't bring my cell phone with me and I didn't have any access to anything. So I hopped in the car with the first person who drove by, and then, they took me off somewhere and killed me. Like as a catastrophizing situation, like that would be an expensive lesson. But a cheap lesson would be, I ran out of gas. I had my cell phone. I was able to call somebody and then they were able to get me some gas and I could drive on down the road. And starting to learn as a parent or as a teacher, what is a cheap lesson and how can they learn this big important thing with a little bit of struggle, as opposed to later on, it's going to compound into something that is really, really expensive.
Yeah.
And so as a parent, I tried to employ that with my son. I tried to think of like all the time, anytime he would make a mistake, I talked to him about a cheap lesson versus an expensive lesson. And I would allow him to make these cheap lessons, even if it was, like he was buying a toy that I knew he would throw away in 2 days. Then, if he was using his own money and he spent that $20 on that thing, and then we would talk about it later and I would say, look, this is a cheap lesson. You could either save your money and buy something that you're going to use for a long, long time, or you can keep buying little things like this. Which one would you rather do? And so over time, that helped to teach him a little bit of financial responsibility. So yeah, that's kind of how I frame it in my mind. I think that's a brilliant life lesson. And I want to thank Ben and his dad for putting that in the book, because it really helped me as a father to be able to frame things. Yeah. All right. Well, I think that we've pretty much covered this now. We've got, we're in this for a little over half an hour now. So we just want to thank everybody for listening and tuning in today and talking about how to quit your learned helplessness. If you're new to the podcast, you can visit us at commandqpodcast.com. And you can also join our proud community of quitters by signing up there and going to our Discord. We also have all of our episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube now. So if you'd like to see our shining faces, you can go find our Command Q Podcast YouTube channel. Thanks so much. And we will see you next time. Until next time, we're reminding you that quitters can win and winners can quit. This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute medical, legal, or financial advice. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed are the guest's own and do not necessarily represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of Command Q or Uncompany.